channel this week. We got a great episode for you. We're going to be talking about why I think that the Fuji X-T5 is an important camera in the Fujifilm lineup, and also along with all the other APS-C and even full frame cameras. Now, the biggest reason for me as a photographer is the flippy screen. I know a lot of you folks love that thing. I hate it. So, and a lot of photographers that are just mainly photographers and not videographers are partial to the three-way tilt screen here, which on the X-T3, what a wonderful thing. For me as a photographer, I've found that it's so much easier to look down, open the screen up and look straight down instead of having to flip the screen out and hold it down like this. And then you're looking off to the side. It just makes no sense to me. And with this screen, it goes vertically, so you can look at it this way, and you can also hold it down like this. You can also do that with the flippy screen, but it's off to the side again, and it folds up in the way. And quite honestly, it gets in the way of an L bracket as well. So photographers, not videographers, photographers are gonna like this three-way tilt screen a lot better. The other thing is that we're keeping with the X-T3, X-T4 dial layout on the top here. You know, we got an ISO, shutter speed, and exposure compensation, and a lot of the lenses now have the f-stops on the lens. So it's a traditional format. So people that have shot with older cameras, that were film cameras, are more used to this layout. And quite honestly, photographers that are used to the Fuji setup are more used to that instead of the PASM dial, which is like on this this Canon M50 here. You can see right here the PASM dial, and it, you know, I used it with my Canons and I got used to it. It was fine, but you know, I love going back to this. It just made so much more sense to me. One of the other things is that the IBIS in this camera is pretty interesting. It's just a little bit better than the X-T4, but I gotta tell you, it's smaller and lighter, which makes this camera smaller and lighter, even with this larger battery in it, which to me, this is another improvement because I don't have the X-T4, which has this battery in it. I have the X-T3, which has the older battery in it. The other thing that's great about this camera is that the IBIS in it is smaller and lighter and gives you 7 stops instead of 6.5 stops of stabilization, which is great. And I can't wait to try some older lenses on it that are not stabilized like, you know, some of these smaller Fuji lenses, like this one isn't stabilized. So, you know, it's kind of fun to use those older lenses in that way. Now the sensor, of course, the sensor is a big deal. It's a 40 megapixel sensor, which means the photo sites are not as large as with the 26 megapixel X-T3 and X-T4, but there's more detail in it. And I've seen that with some prints I've made, really great. And you know, I did a video on it, so you might want to check that out right here, over there, over here, wherever. It's also in the description below. So I have made some big prints, you know, up to 17 by 22, and really the amount of detail is striking. It's pretty nice. So the sensor, much better. Maybe not in low light. Low light, I found that it's a little not as good, but hey, what are you gonna do? You can't win at everything. But what we're saying here is this an important camera for Fujifilm? I believe it is. Now, the processor, double the speed of the X-T4. That's a big deal in this small camera like this. And the autofocus, I did a video on that, so check it out up here and in the description below. And I gotta tell you, I really felt that the autofocus was much better than the X-T4 and obviously the X-T3. Now, this, I gotta say, this battery lasts a long time. And of course, you X-T4 users, you probably got a little bit less. I think that the power consumption of this camera is a little bit better than in the X-T4. And honestly, as far as cameras go, I was really excited to get my X-T3, and it took me a long time to get used to it. Not the button dial, not the layout on top, but all the other things that are going on with it was because it was vastly different from the Canon camera. Now I've got to say that so far my experiences with this camera have been really great. I really like this camera a lot, and I think that in videos coming up I'm going to show that in a number of different ways. One thing that I haven't talked about a lot is that this camera also does video, and in my last video about Multnomah Falls, the shot that I took with the 70-300 in tight of the waterfall with the ice around it was done with this camera, and I gotta tell you, it's pretty steady. It's almost all the way out at 300. I'm telling you, it was great, and that was done at 4K 60, and you know, I probably should have tried to slow it down a little bit. It probably would have been a lot more interesting, but I gotta say the video chops of this camera are really good. So for me, who's going back and forth between video and stills, more stills than videography, I like being able to get really quality, or I should say high quality video from such a small camera. So going forward, I believe this camera is an important camera, and the next camera out I think is going to be the X Pro 4, and I'm hoping that it's got a 3-way tilt screen on it and that it has IBIS in it. That would be just plain awesome. That X Pro 4 would be like having an SLR and my Leica M series cameras. It would be kind of cool. Last but not least is the 7 custom settings in stills and in movie mode. And the best thing about this, and I think it's pretty much the same thing as the X-T4, but I'm not really sure. I know it is in the XS10, is that the parameters that you can set for each one of these custom settings is unbelievable. But the best thing is that I use Fuji X Weekly. I use their film simulations all the time, and I love playing around with them. And the cool thing is that you can now, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you could do it with the X-T4 and the XS10, I'm not really sure, but he usually changes, this is Richie Roche, he usually changes the auto white balance color a lot, and that's how he works his film simulations. You can do as many as you want in here, up to 7, I guess. So it's pretty cool, and I gotta say that's the one thing that I really like about this camera is that I can do 7 different film simulations with all sorts of white balance settings, and it's really kind of cool. The one thing that I wish they could do with this camera would be to be able to do a bracket setting for different custom settings. So let's say 3 different custom settings and 3 different film simulation recipes. That would be pretty cool. So next week we're going to try and get out on the road. I've got some places I've got in mind that I want to photograph with this camera. And the other exciting news is I'm taking a big road trip with my son Andy, and if you want to check out his channel, he's got a couple of videos up there right now called The Andy, all one word. Not sure why he called it that, but he did. And it's all about his trip from Oregon all the way over to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I'm going to join him in Austin, and I'm going to be driving with him along Route 20 and looking for places to photograph. And when we get in, and I'm sure that I'll probably have maybe one video while I'm on the road, but probably the rest of them will be from here. So thanks for watching this week. I really appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and please make a comment and let me know how you feel as to whether or not this camera is important or not. Now, obviously, you're gonna have people that are back and forth. Some people think that the XH2 and the XH2S are maybe even more important. Those are top of the line cameras. They're great in their own right, and they do specific things. But for me, they're just too big. I don't like the big grip. I don't like any of that stuff. Now, if I was still a news photographer, I'd probably still be a Canon guy. I probably would not be a Fuji guy. But you know, the XH2S is a great camera. So anyway, that's it for this week. And remember, it's not what you photograph, it's how you photograph it, and we'll catch you next time.